Hey internet, Raz here again. So after my last video I realized that I like to talk about my art journey because I think everybody struggles with this, not even just in art, but maybe in other facets of creativity or even just regular work or anything that you do. Since I'm in my mid-30s now, I kind of wanted to make a video about this, which is basically, can you learn art after 30? And the answer is yes. In my journey, it was a complete turnaround. I went from this that you see here on the screen. This is the notepad that I learned to draw on. This is one of the first pictures I drew in it, just messing around with a pen. Mo kid. And then I started to take it a little more seriously just out of boredom, really. Well, not just boredom, but then there was a point where I was trying to learn how to make video games, so I was messing around inside like Unity engine and stuff like that, and I ended up getting to a point where I couldn't make the art myself, and I was like, okay, well, if I can't make the art, then I can't make anything. So I just kind of let that slide to the side and went on about my business, and I didn't really intend to learn art, it just kind of happened. Well, eventually I did intend to, but what got me there was just doodling. I kind of got inspired by seeing my doodles improve over time. So here was one of my video game drawings. I started with this and tried to make a game, and this was like a concept for a character, and I just realized, oh wow, I can't do anything here. It's awful. If you're watching this and you're in your 30s, you probably learned a lot of stuff in your life, and that's really all it is with art. At least for me, I thought that people were born with it, that it wasn't just something that you learn. I mean, and obviously I was mistaken. I'm sure it's not as easy for everybody as it was for me, but I find it helps if you can set your expectations. Now, I didn't expect to ever draw anything amazing, but like almost everything I drew, I was like super proud of. And I would show my friends at work and stuff, and it would be stupid stuff. I'll show you some of them here. Like, here's a dog I drew. I was just messing around with a pen, and the reason I put him in the doghouse was because I couldn't make the back legs look right because I had no idea how to do that. I have a couple of good tips that maybe I can give out that might help somebody who just wants to learn or is struggling, but maybe I'll do that in another video. But if you're trying to learn and didn't start out doing any art early, and maybe now you have some free time or you just want to pick it up, just set your expectations that anything that you make, if you have no practice in it, it's going to look awful to you and probably to other people. But you'd be surprised how often your art doesn't actually look awful to other people. Because usually when you make anything, and if in your life you have created anything, you always see the flaws. Like when you get dressed up in an outfit and everybody says you look amazing, but you're like, oh man, I look terrible. Look at this one little pimple, or look at this one hair out of place. Like, nobody sees that stuff. I have a cousin that just obsesses over how straight his beard is underneath, and it's like nobody will ever see it. Only you see it. So try to focus on the things that really matter. So if you keep your expectations to where that you're going into it with the same skill level as a 10-year-old child, except now you have all this life experience of learning how to learn, so you can use that to kind of help push yourself forward. Now, I find that if you draw things you're familiar with, especially like realistic things, now it really depends on the style you're going for, but I noticed that drawing things like shapes with a light in the room, just like shadows, it's like basic art stuff you'll be able to see in every video you ever look up. That really helps. That last picture was from February of this year, and then here was April. I drew this around Easter. So I figured out how to do the back legs and maybe a little bit of shadowing, and it's weird, but it's cute. And it actually, I think the biggest thing I remember about this piece was the tooth in the front. For a long time, I had 2 teeth, and it just never looked right until I got rid of it and only put 1. And it's just because the perspective was wrong. Now, I didn't know what that was at the time, but when it had 2 teeth, it looked like the face was kind of sitting tilted towards us, but then the rest of the head showed that it was straight ahead. So it just your brain gets tricked. One of the things that I believe about art is that it's kind of, you don't really draw what's on the paper. Just draw the idea of it and then somebody can see it. And I guess that's kind of hard to explain, but imagine if like an alien species came to Earth and you showed them your drawing. Even if they could see light, it wouldn't look like anything to them because our eyes are made to see light a certain way. And all you're really doing is tricking the brain into seeing an image where there isn't one. And I know for me, I'm a very rational mind. I'm into logical structures, things like that. So I was always really good at like mechanical things, but when it came to any kind of artistic expression, I couldn't figure out, how to make it work right. And it was because I was always trying so hard to draw the picture on the paper instead of like drawing light on a paper. Because that's really what you're doing, especially if it's a realistic image. And even in a lot of stylized stuff, using color, shapes, and then the way light works with those objects in order to make them look like objects. Okay, so this wasn't one I did, but I wanted to draw a pretty girl or an anime girl or whatever. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that would like to draw this kind of stuff. So I grabbed this as a reference and I tried to do it in pencil. And I believe this was in about June I started it. And I was doing it on a piece of paper. And this was my initial start. And you can see that it's at least relatively looks like her. I was getting along okay. But the whole time I was doing it, nobody was really like, oh yeah, your stuff is great. And I showed people, but they all just laughed. But I kind of have that personality where I can laugh at myself. So I knew that I was, making progress, and it just felt good that I was finally able to do it, because this is something I thought I could never do. So if you're struggling with art, just try to appreciate your growth, on your own. Definitely show it to people and you'll probably get a lot of encouragement. It all depends on, your life situation. But if it's just you, or you keep your art to yourself, you'll learn to appreciate the growth moments. Or at least try to as hard as you can, Just because you have a failure of a picture, it's okay. I mean, a lot of mine are failures, and they always start out awful anyway. And I'll show you an example of that, when I do maybe some of my later videos about my paintings. They always start out looking like blobs of mess, and then you kind of clean them up. If you watch the last video, you can kind of see what I'm talking about in that one. So I continued to do this piece. This was in June. And then I kind of got it where I wanted it, but I tried to add a body, and I made the mistake of not knowing how proportions work, so she ended up looking like a dwarf. But I was pretty proud of it. I did a good job on the boobs, at least that's what everybody said. And I was just trying to figure out like where's her body situated, because you look at the proportions of the midsection and it's like the shoulders are kind of straight, but like her left shoulder, your right, if you're looking at it, should be back some, and then the other one should be forward a little bit, but it's behind her head, and then her torso is contorted back as well. It's a mess of perspective all over the place. Even like the neck bones are too far left, and the arm should probably come up, but then the arm needs to be longer too. I tried to hide it in the hair as best I could, but it was just a failure of a drawing. And I think this was like the finish of it. I felt like I did okay. Obviously it's not perfect, and I couldn't draw feet or legs for the life of me. I also ran out of paper at the bottom, but probably had to be so long. It was incredible. But that was June. And then I'm going to do like a 2-month gap here, because about after I did this, I think I got my first tablet. Oh, okay. So here's the finished one a little more up close. Forgot I had this in here. I was proud of it because it was something that I tried to draw, and I was able to draw it, but obviously the proportions are off, but that's okay. Her little baby arms. And then here's a painting I did just 2 months later. And basically, what I'm trying to show here is that I can't draw very well at all, and I couldn't draw, was even worse then. But the mistakes that I made making that girl allowed me to make, the next time that I went to draw something, it came out better. So, don't get your hopes like crushed if you draw something and it looks like crap. It's supposed to, because you don't know what you're doing. And as you make mistakes, You'll just learn from them, just like with anything else. And I don't know how hard I can stress it, but art is not something that you're born with. Some people have it easier than others, but it is a skill that can be learned like anything else. So the best thing you can do is just, start doodling, start drawing, start doing something, and fail at it, because you probably will. Well, you will. And you'll learn from every failure, and you'll have successes along the way. You'll figure out what works for you, and that's the best way you're going to succeed. Just figure out what works for you, do that thing over and over again. And all this stuff you learn in art, like shapes and light and proportions, and it all carries over into whatever else you want to draw. It's not like you'll learn how to paint something and then you won't know how to pencil it. It all kind of works together, because all you're ever doing is simulating light, color, and shape. But I'm going to leave a link to a channel and then one of the videos I watched that really helped me understand the fundamentals of art. It'll be down in the description box. You probably already saw it if you ever search for it, but I think it's one of the best, like, short, quick, easy ones to learn just the basic fundamental things that you kind of need to pay attention to when you're drawing. Hopefully this will help you get started and you can laugh at some of my awful work. And just don't worry, this is something that you can paint. I went from that to that in a couple of months, and there was no cheating here. I did this by hand with reference from a picture of a girl on Instagram. I didn't trace it, none of that. It was just diligence. I mean, it probably took me, 25 hours in total, but I only did this stuff at work, just doodling and, painting this. So it was just on and off, over a course of a couple of weeks. So hopefully that'll help you. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my art. The next video will probably be a time lapse of this green-haired girl here, and we'll go over some of the stuff. It's got some really funny stuff in it, so hopefully keep an eye out for that. But anyway, have a good one.